Hey folks, Nathan here from Star Wars Beyond the Films, the Star Wars Timeline Gold, and the Star Wars Reports Rebels Roundtable. Going to be bringing you another Battlefront live stream here, but as is fitting with this idea of the Battlefront live stream podcast, it's more playing Battlefront and talking about various Star Wars topics as opposed to being something where we're just talking about Battlefront itself. No guests this time. I've had a lot of people, because of the Star Wars Timeline Gold, because of my work with Beyond the Films and Rebels Roundtable and such, asking me my thoughts on The Force Awakens, now that I've had a chance to see it multiple times. And it turns out that really we're in a position where, from a time standpoint, it'll be a little bit before you hear it in any other venue. Congratulations, I've been awarded 5,000 credits. I'm not sure why, but I do. Well, hey, wonderful. So basically, just want to take this time to give you a quick rundown of those and answer any questions that do pop up in the chat as anybody happens to jump on and view the live stream, although it is relatively early right now on Christmas Eve when I'm recording this, so it is very possible that we may not have very many people getting a chance to actually hop into the chat itself. Now, you will be able to hear my thoughts along with the thoughts of the other members of the Rebels Roundtable team in the relatively near future on an episode of the Star Wars Reports Rebels Roundtable. We recorded the first half the other day, expecting to get the entire thing done, and as we were getting to about the halfway point, Jonathan's modem just completely died. Like, died to the point where his internet service provider has to come out and replace it. Because of our schedules for the members of the team who are on the call, which this time included Jen, Jerry, Jonathan, Barrett, and me, it turns out that basically there was no other chance for us to finish recording that until after Christmas passes. So once we get a few days from now, we'll record the other part of it, and then we'll get a chance to air that. Mark and I have started to record for Beyond the Films our year-in review segments. We've recorded our books one, we've recorded our comics one, and in the other stuff one, we are going to give our first impressions of The Force Unleashed, I keep doing that, of The Force Awakens. And then fairly soon after that, we will have a chance to actually do our detailed coverage of The Force Awakens. We're going to be doing episodes on things like how closely does The Force Awakens match things that happen in the old Legends continuity, and conversely, to what extent was it absolutely necessary to remove the old Legends continuity out of the way in order for The Force Awakens to exist? Was this still a good decision? Was it still an unavoidable decision? Or was this something where they should have made something to fit, blah, blah, blah? We'll be taking a look at things like how the expanded universe, or I guess not even expanded universe they would call it now, how the new canon stories wind up playing into the story of The Force Awakens. For instance, Before the Awakening, or any of the Journey to The Force Awakens stuff, which barely played into anything at all. All of those types of things. We're going to be seeing how those types of things or gives the stover effect to the process of watching the film. And some more. So we're going to be doing a whole lot of cool coverage for The Force Awakens, but because we still have 2 episodes about Kanan to release, and we've got our 3-part year-in review to release, my intention was to wait initially until you can hear the thoughts on there, but so many people have still been asking that I figured why not put together a live stream to just give some quick thoughts on The Force Awakens now that it's out in theaters. I did go see it. Hello, Ben. I did go see it opening night. Our local theater was going through renovation, so I actually couldn't pre-order our tickets until 2 days before the film actually released. But we went at 12:40 a.m., my wife and I, to the Fayetteville, Georgia, Tinseltown Cinemark Theater, and we saw it in 2D, just the regular 2D to start with. And then a few days later, while she was at work, on that Monday, I guess it was, I went to go see it in... Cinemark calls it XD. It's basically a 4K projection, so it's an extremely high-definition projection, and it's in 3D in that case. So I did get a chance to see the 3D version. 3D doesn't really enhance the film all that much. It makes for some cool moments where, for instance, the Finalizer, the giant... Resurgent class Star Destroyer is sticking out of the screen big time, like right in your face. But for the most part, for something that is 3D enhanced, it really didn't enhance it too much. I would just hope that what we're getting here... missile incoming! I would hope that what we're getting on home video will be the first Star Wars home video release in 3D, and maybe that can give them a justification to also include the films that we know they've already made. Lost, son of a... The ones we know that they've already made in 3D, right? We know they've already made Phantom Menace, Episode 2 and Episode 3, all of them in 3D, so hopefully that'll be a chance to get those. I'm going to be jerking a little bit. I forgot I'm dealing with... I actually plugged in my wired connection here, only I forgot to switch it when I finally turned everything on, so I am back on wireless, so I'm going to have the stuttering just a little bit. That sucks. Alright. In any event, so went to see the film, and I went into this one relatively spoiler-free. I mean, I'd heard, you know, bits and pieces of speculation, but, you know, if you look at a lot of the articles on so-called spoilers for The Force Awakens that came out within a couple of months of the film itself coming out, it's about 50-50 on what's actually accurate and how much it was just complete bullshit. So it's kind of one of those, oh, well, you know, I really don't know the story of the film no matter how many spoilers I actually bothered to look at. And of course, this time they didn't release the novel until in fact, the physical novel still hasn't been released yet. The ebook version of the novel wasn't released until the day the film came out. So unlike in the past where they've done the thing where it's been a month or more prior to the film coming out when you can read the book and already know the story, in this case you couldn't do that. So it was all still pretty much pure speculation. Speculation sometimes based on evidence, but speculation nonetheless when it came to what people were reporting about it. I guess it would help for me to actually go to the capture point and try to play the objective a little bit. So I went in mostly spoiler-free. I had read all of the existing Journey to the Force Awakens stuff before going in, though. So we're talking, you know, Aftermath, we're talking Smuggler's Run, Moving Target, Weapon of a Jedi, and so forth. All those different things. And I'm amazed at how little any of those told us anything about The Force Awakens. For something called The Journey to the Force Awakens, it didn't really give us the journey, and it didn't really tell us much about The Force Awakens, so it was really sort of a failed marketing experiment in that sense. With the exception of the fact that Tim and Wexley, one of the main characters, the kid character from Aftermath, turns out to be a recon pilot for the Resistance, played by the dude from Heroes, Greg Gruenberg, or however you say his name. There really wasn't much that we learned at all that was useful to us from the Force Awakens, Journey to the Force Awakens products. I mean, hey, look, it's Sarko Plank. I know the background of that background character. High Noon on Jakku. Hey, it's Constable Zuvio. I don't even know where the hell he is in the film. You know, that sort of thing. So, went into it thinking I knew more than I probably did, but pleasantly surprised by the fact that I didn't. In fact, I may try to go into the future Star Wars films relatively spoiler-free as well. New characters, I really enjoy Finn. I mean, Finn's kind of like the Han Solo of this one. He's got the smart mouth. I mean, you can tell from the moment that he does his whole, so who talks first? Do I talk first or you talk first? I can't tell with all the apparatus. You can tell pretty much from that moment that he's going to be sort of the funny, smart-alecky character of it. And he plays the part well, although the fact that he disappears after the Special Forces TIE Fighter crashes and then doesn't reappear again until the end, and they just give us some quick little explanation for how that's possible, I thought that was kind of crap. But the novel has a scene that shows him meeting with a traitor who helps him eventually get off the planet. So my guess is that that's a scene that was actually scripted for the film, hence being put in the novelization, but then eventually cut from the film for time and pacing, more than likely. We'll probably get that as a deleted scene, if not on the Blu-ray, then eventually on another Blu-ray set many, many years from now, like with all the other freaking deleted scenes that it seems like sometimes we get, and other times they give us a release that has nothing. Open! I'm trying to play with a different kind of gun now, by the way, instead of the DL-44 that I usually play with, just because I want to kind of get a feel for the different types instead of always sticking with the same one. Alright, let's see if I can actually go to the capture point instead of being an idiot here. So Poe I liked, but he didn't get nearly enough screen time, and I'm not a big fan of the new look for the helmets. And the helmets look a little goofy that the pilots use. So with that being the case, I kind of had to laugh most of the time when he was on screen. I forget what I said. Yeah, Poe, I said, unless I said it wrong. But yeah, and then you got Finn, of course. Finn's kind of the mover and shaker that makes a lot of things happen in the film. He doesn't necessarily turn out to be the hero. but he's the one who's the impetus for a lot of things. There are some who have made the argument, well, Finn doesn't even need to be there, right, because of you know, they're going to do certain things anyway, et cetera, et cetera. But really, I mean, he's the one that really kind of pushes, hey, we're going to go to Starkiller Base, we're going to try to find Rey, which allows them to go in and blow things up to help the Resistance win in the end anyway. I mean, it's not so much that he's useless as he's just not the single mover and shaker, but he's a big part of it. Funny character. Boyega is incredibly endearing just, you know, to see him on social media and such. So it kind of helps draw you into the character. I do think that it's a little bit off-putting that the only character that we get who's using a lot of, well, with the exception of Han using the phrase mumbo-jumbo, the only character that we get really that's using Earth slang is the black guy. And he even gets a chance to utter his own Star Wars-y version of, oh, hell nah, when he does the, you know, hell no, which is different than in the novel where he simply says no. There are moments where it feels like, and I don't know if this is Boyega or if this is Abrams or if this is something that changed with the shooting script after the novel. But it seems as though Boyega is being allowed to play into racial stereotypes more than any of the other characters in the film. They stray pretty far away from stereotypes for the most part in this film, as opposed to Phantom Menace. It was all about, let's make all the different alien races different ethnic stereotypes. But yeah, that was a little bit off-putting, but not enough to you know, take me out of liking the character or anything like that. I do think that he changed fairly quickly, given that that was his first mission, but if you read the story in Before the Awakening about Finn, you'll know that yes, that was his first mission, and boy, they're having him do something pretty horrible for his first mission. But even though that was his first mission, he had already started to have some of those doubts beforehand. He'd already had more compassion for his fellow soldiers than was expected of him, and that sort of thing, so he wasn't an empathetic character previously. That's the same thing with Poe, by the way. Poe becomes a more interesting character the more we learn about him, and his story in Before the Awakening is probably the best of the three, because it really does give some background on, you know, how he joins the Resistance, what his thoughts were before he joined the Resistance as far as the First Order was concerned. We get to meet other members of his team, his previous squadron. It was Rapier Squadron. Not Raper Squadron, that'd be something different. Rapier, like the sword squadron. And yeah, it enhanced his character very much. Finn, to a degree, got enhanced a little bit. Rey, I wasn't as big on Rey the first time I saw the film. I was kind of wondering where she was coming from. Who is this girl? And I say girl, she's 19. Finn's 23, she's 19. Poe is 32. And I'm kind of just wondering, you know, where does she fit into all of this? I'm still of the mind that she's probably somehow related to Luke. There's a big theory out there, well, she is Obi-Wan's daughter. Well, not unless Obi-Wan conceived a child 15 years after he died, in which case that would make sense. Maybe it's a ghost impregnation. Maybe it's kind of like the midichlorians getting she-preggers. But yeah, I was kind of trying to figure out where she is and trying to understand her coming into the Force as it went through, because she does tend to gain... I'm not a big fan of Supremacy, but I need to win 3 Supremacy matches for this challenge if I don't want to pay the credits to reset it. But I did like the fact that as you get into the novel and as you watch the film a second time, it starts to make a little more sense at how she's developing those abilities so quickly. The idea of the Force Awakens refers to her, right? The awakening of the Force within her. The fact that as she's awakening into the Force, she's seeing Kylo Ren use certain abilities, and in some cases she is sort of mimicking it back. Like her whole, you know, you'll open these restraints and leave the room with the door open and drop your blaster and all that, is her recognizing what Kylo had been doing inside her mind and sort of pushing his thoughts into hers, and that she was able to sort of turn it back on him and wondering if she could do the same type of thing to someone who was not strong in the Force. If she could manipulate someone the way he was trying to manipulate her mind. And she does. She uses it right then and there on, you know, 007 Stormtrooper. The first time I was just kind of like, whatever. I was paying a lot more attention to Finn, I guess, because he was a little bit more of a flashy character, so to speak. But then you get into the second viewing, and I really started paying attention to things like Rey's expressions. People kept talking about how this is such an incredible... And yeah, you start actually attention to the subtleties of her character, the expressions, the whether comedic or freaked out or whatever. And she gives a really good performance. So... Rey, strong performance, character would be nice if we knew more about, but the moment of her, and this is why it's a spoiler warning on this type of thing, the moment where in the final duel, or whatever you want to call it, where she's able to essentially grab the lightsaber and pull it to her instead of having it go to Kylo Ren, who is wounded at the time and not at his best. I guess is the rationale for that. It flying across his face, landing in her hand, and they start playing, I don't know if you noticed, they start playing the music that was played when Luke found the charred bodies of Owen and Beru. That musical cue and that moment is probably my favorite moment of the film and one of my top Star Wars moments. The music is so perfectly done there as the cue. It's another one of those scenes that without John Williams would not have had nearly the impact that it did.
We now have the support of Lord Vader.
Go to the capture point! Stop running in circles and just talking! Whee! There we go. Of course, Kylo Ren, the big new baddie, I really like him. I think, though, that a lot of the criticism he gets is this whole, he's Darth Tantrum. All he does is just get angry and he tears stuff up. My computer goes off back there. I think that's kind of missing the point. That this is a character who is sort of torn. He starts with the light side, he gets pulled towards the dark, but he's not trying to be just dark side. He's trying to find a way to use both, but to essentially make himself immune to the lure of the light side while being able to use all of his various abilities. Something that's brought up, I think, in the novel. And so you got this character who also has these strong family ties, of course, to Han and Leia, and through them to Luke. And he was the one who betrayed them, right? So here's someone who's somewhat conflicted by guilt and by everything else. And I think it plays... Oh, Luke killed me. Speaking of Luke. I thought you were supposed to be gone. He apparently doesn't leave until after the things happen with his Jedi students and Kylo Ren kills and everything. But I like the fact that he is torn between them, that he isn't this perfect, purely dark side character. He has the sort of questioning of himself, the human side, that Anakin / Vader didn't feel like he had. I mean, you look at Revenge of the Sith and how fast Anakin turns, it's like there's no doubts in his mind. And every great once in a while you'll see something that suggests that maybe he's kind of overthinking it, that he's saying, oh, well, maybe I shouldn't have done this. But pretty much from the moment it's, I pledge myself to your teachings, it's boom, he's evil. Period. The novelization by Stover does a pretty good job of giving him some more depth for that, but the film itself doesn't do it. Here's a character who is questioning. Here's a character who is more psychologically interesting. And the fact that he is, I mean, again, going into heavy spoiler territory, when he kills Han, when he's basically there, you can believe that he is really torn. You can believe that he really does find himself being pulled apart and knows what he has to do, but doesn't feel like he has the strength to do it. Now, we as the audience are hoping, and Han is hoping, presumably, that it's about turning away from the dark side. Or, at best, when he pulls out his lightsaber and starts holding it out to Han, that what this is that he wants to commit suicide or something. But instead, no. It's that he believes that he has to kill Han, very much like the trial of Jason Solo having to kill Mara Jade in order to fully bring himself to the dark side in Legacy of the Force. And you say, well, that's not canon. Okay, well then it's like the betrayal of Sifo-Dyas by Dooku, which is said to have been one of his last trials as he became a Sith. But basically giving yourself over to the dark side kind of requires some form of sacrifice. And that's what he's concerned about. That's what he's not sure if he can do, but that's not the way we're interpreting it, because we're trying to, pray that Han's still going to somehow live. I think that was a great moment, and he makes for a really good character. And the whole idea, well, he just throws temper tantrums. Well, one, he's someone who's trying to use the dark side to fuel himself, to fuel his powers. So yes, reveling in that rage and destroying things, that fits the character. Now, he doesn't kill his subordinates the way that we would expect Vader to, but again, he is someone who is sort of raised in the light, and trying to stick with a little bit of like that balance. He's conflicted, whereas Vader was no longer conflicted. Of course he would just kill whoever pissed him off. That's not who Kylo is. That's not the type of character that Kylo is, or that Ben is. So I liked it. I mean, I think he plays well. I think it's a different type of character. I think people are assuming that he is a Sith because they're so used to the idea of that Vader was a Sith, whereas he is not. He is one of the Knights of Ren. He's the leader of the so-called Knights of Ren, who we see in that either vision of the future or flashback. I'm kind of thinking probably a flashback because of the rain. But he's a Knight of Ren. This is a group we've never seen before. This is probably one of those groups of people sent out into the far reaches of space by the Emperor that eventually became these other Force traditions and such that we see mention of in Aftermath when Yashu, or whatever his name is, talks about him. So to me, I think all of the new primary characters are very strong. Maz Kanata, amazingly done CGI, probably the best CGI character. I keep getting these ships. I don't want to use them. I'll just let the timer run out. Probably the best CGI character we've seen in Star Wars, if you don't count pure animation. Like, certainly, I think Ahsoka was a better pure CGI character, but that's CGI animation, not CGI in a live-action film. I do not consider those two to be equivalent. Captain Phasma, let's see, just kind of seeing the chat here. Gamer Dankar asks about thoughts on Captain Phasma. Captain Phasma was an incredibly wasted opportunity and or marketing ploy. They made a huge deal about how Captain Phasma is a female who's a stormtrooper, which we also get, for instance, in Battlefront Twilight Company, and how she is the leader of the Stormtrooper legions there, which she is. She does command the legion, or the groups that include Finn. Some people said, well, when she says, report to my division, that it's somehow saying that she isn't normally under, like, Finn isn't normally under her command. He is. We find that out. That's clarified in Before the Awakening. But as much as they played up the character, I mean, she barely did anything. She was there basically to be an imposing character on Finn briefly, deliver some reports, and then be pressured by a threat to her life into basically giving up the base, which I would assume a stormtrooper with very good training, as she's supposed to be, would not have done, would have sacrificed themselves, been willing to die, rather than saying, yeah, I'm going to help you bring the shields down, or I'm going to do this, or I'm going to do that. Excuse me. And yet somehow that's what she winds up being. She is a poor character, I think. She strengthens the idea of women in the Empire by existing. She harms the idea of women characters by being so easily manipulated into giving up power. Although, whether that's I don't think that was because she was a woman, but the fact that it's a woman character who's doing that gives fuel to those people who want to make the argument of Star Wars portraying women as poorly done characters. I think she was very much a marketing ploy. She is able to sell action figures. Oh, look, she's got neat silvery armor that's actually made out of the hull, or parts of the hull, from an old Naboo spacecraft that Palpatine owned, according to the Visual Dictionary. Okay, but what's her point? She's like any other background character, just gets a little bit more screen time and gets turned into, plenty of action figures. I would say, for those who make the argument here about whether these are actually strong female characters, you get the Mary Sue thing that comes up when it comes to Rey. People who are saying Rey is a Mary Sue don't understand the term Mary Sue. Okay? And Mary Sue is a character that is uber powerful, uber talented, that all the other characters, including established characters, are all basically wowed by, to the point where they are almost Wesley Crusher to everyone else on the Enterprise. Always being the one to save the day, never being the one in trouble, etc., or usually not. But also that it's as if what you're viewing is a form of fan fiction. And in writing the fan fiction, the author has put themselves into the story, and the character that's being called a Mary Sue is a surrogate for the author. Okay? I don't think that Kazdan and Arndt and JJ were vicariously living in the story through the person of Rey. That does not seem like it's the case. So, My argument would be that she's not a Mary Sue. She does, however, develop very quickly, and that is a valid criticism. I think it probably deserves a little more explanation. I'm betting we're going to get it with Episode 8, so for now, I'm just going to kind of take the explanation from the novelization and what little we get from the film and just kind of go with it and sort of reserve judgment on that. But you'll notice, and this really pleased me about the film, Daisy Ridley is someone who, by Hollywood standards, would be considered an attractive woman. Okay? They always try to look for attractive people when they're casting lead roles in Hollywood. You're not going to see someone like me in a lead role in Hollywood because I'm just not that attractive. But I think, though, that they did a good service to women in sci-fi in general by not over-sexualizing her character. Leia was a strong character in A New Hope, in Empire, in Jedi. But when she's a strong character in Jedi, they over-sexualize her with the whole slave Leia gold bikini thing that Disney is now trying to get away from. You take the character of Padme. Padme is a strong female character in Phantom Menace, in Attack of the Clones, in Revenge, but in Attack of the Clones they over-sexualize with the whole Nexu, slicing, and all of a sudden she's wearing a crop top, I think is what it's called. And then in Revenge of the Sith, they basically make her almost a non-entity. She's barely a character in Revenge of the Sith. Ahsoka. There you go. 2 out of 3 now. Ahsoka, if you look at the Clone Wars, starts out as she's a female Jedi Padawan. Why isn't she wearing what other Padawans are? No, she's a girl as a Padawan, so she's wearing basically a, whatever you call it, like a halter top, crop top, whatever it's called, and a miniskirt while she's out there as a Padawan. And then even when she does get a couple years older, when we see her at age 16, 17, give or take, in the later seasons, she's got the boob window going on. They have over-sexualized Ahsoka. Then we get Rey. And you see all the promo materials of Rey wearing her normal Jakku attire that is not over-sexualized. And I'm just kind of hoping beyond hope that they don't take the character and do an over-sexualization with her later. And they didn't. She is essentially wearing that same outfit throughout the film until the end, where it's like the Resistance uniform, or whatever you want to call it, Resistance attire. And I think that worked. I think she's able to stand on her own. And I've got a lot of friends. I mean, having been married for as long as I have, I don't tend to look at women that way anymore. At least I don't know. Like I can sort of recognize when men and women are attractive, but I'm not like, ooh, generally. But I've got a lot of friends who are totally gaga over Daisy Ridley because of Rey. Was designed to realize the character, and that I think is very impressive. Something that we just did not see in the other trilogies, which makes me wonder if that over-sexualization to some degree was a Lucasism. And based on some of his various interviews that he has given, that seems to have been the case. But it's not a necessary part of a female character. Just because a male character is a strong character, you don't need to over-sexualize the male character. You don't see Finn walking around stripped down to his boxers like, "What's up, guys?" No. You don't see Luke doing it, right? You don't see Han doing it. They're strong characters that don't need over-sexualization because, what? It's a mostly male sci-fi audience? We're not in the 70s anymore. Hell, we're not in the 80s anymore. So, I don't know. To me, that was a very appropriate thing. I think I found that as a positive. Now, one thing that did bother me, at least initially, about casting, Domhnall Gleeson, or however you say his name, who I loved in Ex Machina, that's true, yeah, only Chewbacca walks around naked. To see Gleeson as General Hux did kind of throw me, because he's relatively young to be playing this, like, Tarkin-esque character. But the more I thought about it, the more that it seems to me that that's sort of the theme with the First Order. The First Order is relatively new, it's relatively young. It's almost like, what if the Nazi regime had fallen as it did in World War II, and yet, somehow or another, the Hitler Youth continued on and eventually became neo-Nazis, or the equivalent of neo-Nazis, and started a new Nazi regime, a Fourth Reich, so to speak. In that sense, it makes perfect sense. Moreover, you have the fact, I do like this connection, you have the fact that in the film, there's a quick conversation between Hux and Kylo Ren about whether or not it'd be better to have clone soldiers rather than soldiers who are simply non-clones who are raised, taken from their families, as Finn says, and raised very much like the Jedi did, raised as stormtroopers. And I find it interesting that they have confirmed, Pablo Hidalgo, I believe, has... no, not Pablo Hidalgo, it's a visual dictionary, I guess, that confirmed that this General Hux is actually the son of the Hux that we meet in Servants of the Empire, The Secret Academy, which is the last of the Servants of the Empire books, where we finally find out what happened to Dara Leonis, Zare Leonis' sister, from the storyline that's kind of introduced in conversation in Rebels. And in that book, you have, I believe is he a Commodore? I don't remember what his name was, but what his position was. But the Hux in that story, who is part of heading this academy, has this whole idea that you need to do like the Jedi and you need to do like the Kaminoans, and you need to raise soldiers from birth or from childhood to be good soldiers who follow orders, who aren't weakened like the Empire has been weakened by however many recruits they've had. But you can't use clones because a clone, like the Separatists tried to do a few times, a clone would be particularly susceptible to any kind of genetically targeted virus or bioweapon. So what you would do is you would essentially follow a similar path of training, but you would do so without having to have it based around a clone template that would make everyone the same DNA and thus easily targetable. And to have it be that this Hux is the son of that Hux, I thought was pretty cool. It's a seed that Jason Fry was able to lay in there. And kudos to Jason Fry. And I guess full disclosure, Jason Fry and I would consider friends. I mean, we're not close friends or anything, but I worked with them on the Essential Atlas doing those dated battle maps, and we've talked quite a few times, since then and whatnot. But he is really kind of one of the big movers and shakers when it comes to doing a lot of these tie-in materials to The Force Awakens. I mean, he wrote one of the Journey to Force Awakens books. He co-wrote another one. He wrote, I believe it was Incredible Cross sections for Episode 7. I mean, he did all the Servants of the Empire books, which includes the tips or the hints being given about Hux. So, I'm very impressed with the work that he's done on this, and it's pretty cool and gratifying to see somebody who I know to be such a good guy to have that opportunity. Hello, Bryson. So in general, thoughts on the characters there. I do really enjoy the film, actually, and this is probably where people are going to either love or hate me. I actually find that this is probably my favorite Star Wars film. The first time that I watched it, it felt different to me. It felt odd. It felt more like Star Trek 2009, JJ's Star Trek, than it felt like Star Wars in its aesthetics, because the First Order is... it's a relatively new entity. They have a nice clean look, as opposed to thinking about the classic trilogy where everything, even the Empire, looks somewhat run down and used. The used universe, I believe, is what they referred to it as. That said, I'm just not doing anything. That said, it also, just the fact that it was such clean interiors and whatnot, and the camera angles and such that JJ uses compared to what Lucas used, it did at times kind of make me go, this is Star Wars, but it feels like a different Star Wars. One, that feeling dissipated once I saw it a second time, and two, I think that is to be expected. The more I thought about it, I mean, if you think about I think about the prequels. The prequels have a very different aesthetic and feel different, just in general, as you're watching them than the original trilogy did. It's not necessarily a bad feeling, it's a different feeling. Because of the era that it's in, because of the aesthetic choices that they make while they're producing it. So to me, that's fine. About to die. But I think that now that I saw it the second time, what has always gotten me about the other Star Wars films, most of them, Revenge of the Sith to a degree, but the others definitely, or I guess, no, I take it back, with less emphasis on Jedi and Revenge of the Sith, it's the dragging moments. to me, I want Star Wars to kind of feel like a ride, like this film did, where it just kind of the momentum gets going and the momentum just never feels like it lets up. Whereas the other Star Wars films, particularly episodes 1 and 2 and 4 and 5, have points at which they really kind of drag in the middle. As much as I love Yoda's teachings, that segment where basically an Empire, this is why I can't consider Empire my favorite Star Wars film or a perfect masterpiece. As soon as they get off Hoth and we've got the asteroid chase and the space slug and Luke getting his training after arriving on Dagobah, those parts, the first couple times you see it are just amazing, and you're like, oh, the new philosophy. Seeing it now after the fact, watching it years later, those parts really, really drag for me. The middle portion of The Phantom Menace really drags for me. A New Hope, the opening to a large degree feels like it drags for me. And so on and so on. Whereas my two favorite Star Wars films prior to now, the ones that keep kind of jockeying back and forth, for years it was Return of the Jedi. And then Revenge of the Sith became my favorite, less because of what was on screen and more because of what I could understand in context about what was on screen because of having read Matthew Stover's brilliant novelization of it.
They're taking over control point. Stop them.
Oh yeah? Eat shit. There we go. But I think part of it is because it's that momentum that the films are able to keep. Now, in the last year or so, back and forth, I've found that Return of the Jedi and Revenge of the Sith have gone back and forth quite a bit on which one is my favorite, and I think I've got to the point where now it's Return of the Jedi out of the original 6. But this film, I think, tops even that. The humor is there. I enjoy the new characters. I don't know. Maybe it'll change. To Benjamin's question there, maybe it'll change. But what I found is that my opinions on which Star Wars films are my favorite out of each trilogy, once all of them were out, have stayed steady. It's just whether or not Jedi or Revenge were the favorite, out of the tops of those two lists. So I don't know. I doubt that it will change anytime soon. But, give me a chance to get Force Awakens on Blu-ray and watch it over and over again, like I've watched all the other Star Wars films over and over again, and maybe the things about it now that draw me in more, maybe I will reach points where I'm not quite as bemused by it the way that, for instance, like I said, after seeing Empire so many times, that middle section doesn't do it for me as much anymore. We'll just have to see. But yes, I really like the film. I would consider it the favorite at the moment. The soundtrack, fairly subdued. I was kind of surprised that there aren't a lot of new elements to the soundtrack, but I do like what I'm assuming is Rey's theme. It's introduced. It's in Rey's theme on the soundtrack, but also in The Scavenger. That thing. I think it's perfectly Star Wars. It works well. It's not bombastic by any means. I'm using that term a lot lately. But yeah, I think it works very well. I just kind of wish that there were more new musical elements, but that could be just because I've tended to listen to the soundtrack while I'm doing other things, so I'm probably not noticing all the new elements that exist. Oh, shitballs! Yes! Of course, it's not Walker Assault, so it's not... Oh, I'm gonna get killed! Oh, there we go. Nope. I do have to do X number of kills with one of these to get the card for, get one of the cards for whatchamacallit for a base command. So we'll see if I can actually kill some things with this sucker. Boom! Oh, and I didn't even kill the tie that killed me. Howdy. Fast food satisfaction denied. I like that name. Fast food satisfaction denied. I find that it's usually more like fast food satisfaction acquired, but now enjoy having the craps for a while, depending on where you eat. I've given up on Burger King for that particular reason. Burger King, have it your way, then have the shits. Anyway, so I don't know. Personally, I particularly enjoyed it. I think that it's going to remain divisive for a while because, thanks to that different aesthetic, thanks to the different creative team, and thanks to a lot of fan service that's built into it, the biggest criticism that I'm seeing of it, or one of the biggest, tends to be the whole idea that it feels like a high-budget... Wait a second. There's no holes in the sand. What the... Yeah, whatever. That it feels like a high-budget fan film. And... one, it doesn't fit that definition, just in that, obviously, if it's an official, canonical thing, that's not a fan film. Just like those who argued, well, you know, anything from the old Legends continuity, that's just glorified fan fiction. Well, no, it's legally produced. It's part of a continuity that is sanctioned by the people behind it, so no, that's not fan fiction. But that being said, to an extent, they're correct. Because who's making it? It's not George Lucas, who, I can't do it, who by his own admission never got to see Star Wars as a fan, at least until now. And because of that, never got to have that experience and that connection to the material. He said that in that Oprah interview, that great, I never thought I would say this about Oprah, a great Oprah interview that he did. The concept here, I think, that it could be treated as fan fiction. I mean, they are fans who made it. I mean, everybody who made this, it was a professional thing, but it felt like a labor of love. You can't look at J.J. Abrams talking about the film, or John Boyega, or Oscar Isaac, or Daisy Ridley, to hear them talking about the film and not see the joy they had in making it. And hey, it ends with a fight in a forest, like a fan film would. Particularly something, if you've never seen The Formula by Chris Hannell, my partner in crime for Second Strike, you really ought to check out The Formula, that fan film. But the idea is that, yes, it is fan-made, but it's professionally fan-made. You can make the same argument about, I mean, when I wrote for Star Wars Tales, was that fan fiction? No. Was I a fan? Absolutely. Was I bringing that love of it to it when I was writing it? Yes. Does that make it fan-made fiction? Kind of, but it's fan-made official fiction. So, not exactly the same thing. But I can understand where that's coming from. I just think that those who are making the argument that it is glorified fan fiction, as opposed to saying that it feels like fan fiction, because it was made by people who love the saga, which is not a bad thing, I think those people who are labeling it that way are missing the intellectual honesty side of things. See, that phrase finally came up. They're missing having to say, yes, duh, it is an official thing. It is a canonical thing, so whether I think it feels like fans made it or not, that's what it is. And to answer the question, Fast Food, you came a little bit late. Hence the spoiler warning at the bottom. This entire live stream is dedicated to the idea of me providing thoughts on and answering questions about, for those who ask questions in the chat, about The Force Awakens, because my the two podcasts that I'm on, which are Rebels Roundtable, the Star Wars Sports Rebels Roundtable, the original Rebels Roundtable, before another group grabbed the same name a month or two after we'd already got the domain name and everything. Rebels Roundtable will be having all of our collective... I'm not even going to do this mode anymore. Good lord. Rebels Roundtable has an episode of all of our thoughts coming up in the near future, but because of a modem dying during recording, we're having to record it in two parts. The second part isn't recorded yet, so that is a little bit delayed. And then we have... I'll just do Heroes versus Villains. I still need to play as Han, Luke, and Leia a bunch more times to be able to unlock stuff for base command. But my Star Wars Beyond the Films that I do with Mark Herleman, we're going to be giving our thoughts in the near future on The Force Awakens in our other stuff year in review thing, and then eventually we will have our actual in-depth coverage breaking down things from The Force Awakens, but that's not coming till after the first of the year. So because of that, I'm trying to give the thoughts on the new film here, where I can get them all out kind of at one time. Not a lot of editing needs to be done. Just do it and be done with it, so those who are really curious, who've been asking me a lot, can get a chance to see it, and I can link people to this when people start wondering. And welcome, Brody, Larry, Kai. Let's see, Larry says, I thought the Clone Wars was the most pointless war in the history of, or in Star Wars history. There, I said it. You know, it served its purpose in that it served the purpose of getting the Sith into power, getting Palpatine into power. You got to kind of view, and the thing that kind of gives me the perspective and lets me be a little bit more lenient towards the Phantom Menace a lot of times, and Attack of the Clones to an extent, is viewing it as this whole thing, for the prequels at least, was all a Sith manipulation. The entire thing is the grand schemes. Step 1, manufacture a crisis to get Palpatine to become Supreme Chancellor. Step 2, manufacture a crisis to kick off the war to Gibbs to not relinquish by the end of the Clone Wars, and then use the manufactured uprising or manufactured betrayal by the Jedi in Revenge of the Sith as a way of wiping them out and solidifying the Empire. So that said, you get there's a point to it, but I do think the Clone Wars cartoon series was kind of overlong in that, because we had characters who had defined endpoints, defined beginning and end points, minus Ahsoka, there weren't a lot of opportunities to really do anything spectacular with existing characters at all. You know, they could do some character development. They had to do it with Ahsoka. They had to do it with Rex. They couldn't really do it much with Anakin and Obi-Wan and these characters that we'd known for so long. So a lot of the storytelling potential was hampered right from the get-go, whereas with Rebels, you got an all-new cast of characters, minus the returning Clone Wars characters, the Clone Wars 2.0 aspect of it. So as such, I think it's got more potential to it. Oh, crap! Phasma, that's what I'm playing on this PS4, PlayStation 4. Alright, and red back this way. There's still... Oh, sorry for this scratchiness. I keep looking at the clock here, by the way. The semester is over for my students, barring those who are continuing late for my online teaching stuff. But most of them haven't really needed anything the last couple days. It seems like they're taking around Christmas mostly off. Even though they can still work. I keep looking at the clock, though. My wife's works for about another half an hour, and I want to make sure that I've wrapped up before she gets home, because I think that's a little bit shitty of me. If she gets home and instead of, hey, honey, you know, what are we eating for lunch? It's, hey, honey, I'll be playing a little bit more. And Brody, I guess you came in kind of at the tail end of that conversation. Favorite right now is Force Awakens. Prior to that, I was going back and forth quite a bit between Return of the Jedi and Revenge of the Sith, and but Revenge of the Sith I found was much more because of Stover's novelization than the film itself, and I think that's kind of what's finally pushed me towards Jedi. Thoughts about how little background we were given as to the New Republic and First Order and Resistance and all that. I think that the film probably needed more context. That said, A New Hope didn't give us a whole lot of context either. But of course, A New Hope really only had the two factions, Empire and Rebellion. You didn't really need the explanation. Now, with a trilogy behind us that's featuring these same characters, or some of these same characters, and now getting the new one, of course, there's that question of, yeah, you know, should we have gotten more background? I will say that the virtual thing, thinking of my Fulton Virtual School that I work for, the visual dictionary. Oh, what am I doing? I'm Leia. The visual dictionary does do a good job of providing some explanation. We also get some explanation in Before the Awakening, particularly in Poe's story, and we get some more explanation also in the novelization. The general gist of it, basically, and this is something that it didn't bother me much, but I think it's because I'm a history teacher. It feels very much like what we're seeing in, say, Syria lately, or very much like what we saw in the Cold War, because that is essentially what this is that they've designed here for us. The New Republic comes out of the rebellion, right? The Rebel Alliance defeats Palpatine and Vader at the Battle of Endor. The Imperials are somewhat scattered, starting to fragment. They finally get brought back together to a degree for this supposedly decisive battle where they think they're going to bring down the New Republic over Jakku, hence the Jakku map here. And the result winds up being that... There you go. The result winds up being essentially that you've got a treaty that gets signed, the Galactic Concordance, immediately after the Battle of Jakku, so a year after Return of the Jedi. That creates this fragile peace with a New Republic territory, First Order territory, or Imperial territory, and a border zone in between, almost like North and South Korea with the DMZ in between after the Korean War. Unfortunately, hardliners within the Empire eventually wind up creating the First Order and start militarizing again, very much like, say, North Korea at this point. And they start encroaching on that middle ground territory and whatnot and start acting against the New Republic. But the New Republic is so afraid of turning that Cold War like we experienced right in the 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, turning the Cold War into a hot war, an actual outright conflict, that they won't engage in direct military action unless they have such ironclad proof that it's almost like OJ level proof, and yet OJ got off. That said, Leia breaks away after what happened with Ben and, again, it's a spoiler live stream, with Ben and the wiping out of Luke's other Jedi students and whatnot, that she sort of steps away and goes back to the military leadership standpoint that she had, her familiar patterns, in order to lead this resistance that is essentially smaller even than the Rebel Alliance was, to be a group that has tacit support from some sectors within the New Republic to stand up against the First Order until the New Republic itself decides to actually act. Gamer, regarding Clone Wars, yeah, I think Clone Wars wasn't... I think there probably should have been a story in any other era rather than trying to flesh out the Clone Wars. Especially given the fact that Lucas had said, no, I'm not going to do anything with that. Have fun creating all kinds of intricate stories, Dark Horse and Bantam, during the Clone Wars, and then turns around and takes a wrecking ball to it, deciding, oh, never mind, I'm going to tell the stories myself, screw you. I do think that to a degree it helped show us that relationship between Anakin and Obi-Wan, but... I mean, I'm not sure that the whole, you're my brother, Anakin, was really further enhanced by it, because barring a few instances like when he has a conversation with Obi-Wan and Anakin have a conversation about Padme where he's referencing Satine and such, I mean, they were partners, they were comrades in arms, but I never in many cases really got the feeling of them being as if they were brothers or as if they were father and son type figures like Anakin explicitly states in Attack of the Clones. That was a relationship that we really didn't feel as much, as opposed to, for instance, now we're really starting to feel similar styles of relationships where we're really getting the family sense in Rebels. Must run away, gonna die. Well, I'm gonna die anyway, as soon as somebody hits me again. There we go. Let's see. I think, Ben, the crawl gives a sentence to it. The thing about it is that the crawl doesn't make it too explicit. It's the idea that, there's the Republic, backed by the Republic, Leia Organa leads a resistance against the First Order, blah, blah, blah. I mean, they sort of deal with it, just not much. There we go. As far as, trying to think of other criticisms people have laid, as far as the fact that there's so much of it that is paralleling A New Hope. Were this any other film series, I would say, wow, what a ripoff, man. But Star Wars does that. Star Wars, as Lucas defined it at least, was sort of musical themes, riffs, refrains, choruses that, chori, I guess, that constantly come back so that certain phrases, certain elements are meant to parallel each other, like the ring theory element that you hear recently, where you can sort of take Star Wars films and parallel them either forward or backward and see extreme parallels between sometimes films and sometimes films within trilogies. I think in that sense, what we have here is another instance of, this is like another verse in the same song. There are familiar elements to it, but they're given slight differences in how it plays out. Different chapters in the same volume, so to speak. So I don't have a lot of trouble with it. I think it's funny that some of the people who were like, this is canon now, screw you people who loved Legends, eat it, this will be awesome, Legends sucks, are now being given their own super weapon of the week problem to have to deal with. Because essentially, here's a new super weapon in the first new Star Wars film that we've gotten live action. So that said, it's just kind of what Star Wars is. You don't want something to be a remake without being meant to be a remake, but that I think this is because of that musical theme within Star Wars. It's not the same kind of criticism, I think, that is perhaps valid with, say, Wrath of Khan versus Star Trek Into Darkness, where we're not given a reason for why there's that parallel. Although, in that case, you could say, well, it's just an alternate universe. It's an alternate universe take on Wrath of Khan, and that's it, which is the way I've tried to explain it to myself instead of getting frustrated by it. To Brody's question there about favorite character in the new film, I walked out of my first showing with my favorite character being Poe, because the guy is just hilarious to me. You know, the whole not being, you know, I can't tell because of the apparatus and whatnot. But he doesn't really get enough screen time to really solidify that. So I would probably say Finn of the new characters, but I don't know. Like, Rey grew on me so much in the second viewing versus the first that I'm not sure which of those two I would say it is. I actually would argue, if we're getting away from the heroes, I actually think probably Kylo Ren. Now, if I really want to be honest about it, as much as people are griping about that character, Kylo Ren, because I love the psychology behind the character. You may say, well, he's Darth Tantrum, but that's exactly why I like him. He is a different style character. He is a conflicted character. You can see the emotion in the way that Adam Driver plays the character. I kind of wish he'd played most of the film with the mask off. More of the film with the mask off, because the mask makes people immediately say, oh, it's just another Darth Vader, and start putting all those Vader preconceptions to him, when this is not the same character, it's not the same style of character. He is a far more complex character than anything we ever got with Darth Vader. Maybe until his no moment of throwing the Emperor down the shaft. But here's a character who is complex from the get-go. Ben asks, what about the novelization? Or Benjamin, I don't know if I can say Ben, if that's a... Some people like that, some people don't. Sorry. But to the question about how's the novelization is... I could probably play, you know, better if I wasn't trying to talk and read the chat at the same time, but whatever. How's the novelization? It is good enough. Put it that way. I'm not a big fan of Alan Dean Foster and his previous Star Wars works. I've met the man. He's kind of an off-putting individual when I had the chance to interview him in the past. That said, I try not to look at the author. I try to look at the quality of the work. And in this case, it is a serviceable novelization. It is fairly close to what we get in the film, with some added dialogue. There are scenes in it that add to the story to a small degree. I'm assuming they are actual deleted scenes that we may see as deleted scenes on a Blu-ray release or something like that, as opposed to new things that he added. I am curious about some of the changes between the novel and the film, what stuff was actually in the script versus what is new dialogue that he added. There's not much of a Stover effect, which is what I call it when an adaptation of a film adds so much to that original source material that it enhances your appreciation for it. Like Stover's novelization of Revenge of the Sith enhanced my appreciation for Revenge of the Sith to the point where for a while it was my favorite Star Wars film. There are little tidbits that add, like, a little bit more to, for instance, how Starkiller Base works, but then those seem to be contradicted by the film, suggesting that the mechanics of Starkiller Base changed during production. That it's not about dark energy and drawing dark matter and sub-hyperspace, this and that, because in the book, there's nothing about it drawing power from the sun and having to essentially eat a sun or a star in order to operate. Which suggests, like I said, that it's a significantly different mechanic behind it at this point. I do think that it adds significantly to the background that we get about the Republic First Order resistance, but that's because the film didn't do much with it at all. And my favorite moment that I wonder, again, I'm wondering if it's going to be considered canon, because the novelizations are generally to be considered canonical insofar as they don't contradict the films, but added material is kind of a gray area. But you'll notice at the end of the novelization, or near the end, at that favorite iconic visual moment for me in the film, where the lightsaber goes past Kylo Ren straight into the hands of Rey. Before she ignites that lightsaber and gets into battle with them, Kylo Ren has a line in the novel that's not in the film where he says, "It is you." He recognizes Rey from somewhere. So that, to me, that's sort of a kind of blew me away, this idea that, whoa, is there really supposed to be a connection between those two, that at least they know each other or whatever, and yet that was removed from the film, which suggests that question of, well, was it removed from the film because they went a different direction with it, or because they thought it would give away too much? They could basically say later, oh, well, he actually didn't recognize her, that's just something that was left in the novel from an earlier draft of the script, pay it no mind, or it could be an introduction to something particularly important as far as their connection goes. And yes, I know I should probably do these more often. I haven't had the opportunity lately between having a cold and whatnot, and I try when I do these to bring someone in with me, so it's not just me, so that it's a little more, like if I run out of things that I feel like talking about at the moment, that it's, and maybe the chat's going kind of slowly, that more people will, that having somebody in here with me would also help us spark conversation. I've done one with Mark Herleman from Beyond the Films, did one with Jeff Kinda, did one with Indiana Jim / Jim Perry from Codename Starkeeper and such, and Star Wars, something it's called Survival Guide. I haven't had a chance to organize with anybody else. I'm trying to get Michael Morris on here sometime in the near future, but so I try not to do these by myself. But apparently that seems to be, as long as there's enough people kind of popping in the chat, apparently that seems to be a good thing. But that's, favorite character from the film. A favorite character in Star Wars in general. If we're talking about all continuities, Cade Skywalker. If my wife and I ever have a child who's a boy, he will be named Cade. Cade Franklin Butler. Franklin being the first name of the grandfather that I was closest to when I was growing up. Let's see. Very good to be able to kind of talk to her. But favorite original trilogy character? Probably Han, I guess. I think a lot of my opinions about the different eras are clouded by the continuity and everything around it. But yeah, in the original trilogy films, Han, I would say. Although, now that we have the context for Anakin, I actually find that Vader is a more complex character. Not as complex as Kylo Ren, unfortunately, but a more complex character. So I think about the things that we see within the Clone Wars now, and in the prequel trilogy now, when I see Vader on screen in the original trilogy. And for that matter, I'm one of the few who actually I think is okay with no to throw the Emperor, because I remember as a kid being confused. I was very confused about why Vader turned on the Emperor initially. Then as I started to get older, I understood, like older as in like late elementary to middle school, not that much older. I started to, okay, that it's because he's his son, etc., etc. It's the father's love overcoming the dark side. But I think that it feels like there's not a lot of build-up to that. There's not a lot of sort of seeing inside Vader's head. Like, he's bad guy, bad guy, bad guy. Oh no, my son's in trouble. All of a sudden, I'm going to turn on what I've been for so long. Especially after arguing to Luke, there is no conflict, and so on. I think that the adding of the no is not only going to help, younger viewers, but I think it gives us the ability to sort of see his internal moment of realizing I can't allow this to stand, and then the moment of him actually choosing. It's like a punctuation to those parts of his character. So I actually kind of like that addition. I'm okay with it either way, but the fact that I'm okay with it certainly makes me more okay with it than most people. Man, I'm glad you liked the Dark Disciple review. If you like Dark Disciple and you get that emotional reaction from it and it became one of your favorites, it was my favorite canon novel until I read Lost Stars. Lost Stars has that same emotional connection. I would advise anyone who is a fan of Star Wars, who is going to be reading anything in the new canon, read Lost Stars. It is absolutely phenomenal. The idea that it is just Romeo and Juliet in space, or Romeo and Juliet in Star Wars, is a massive disservice to call it that. It is so much more than that. It is such a fantastic novel. So check that out. Even though it's a young adult novel, a lot of adults are finding it fantastic as well, including myself. Least favorite... I keep doing the... I want to do this, but instead I'm doing this because it's the L2 button. Least favorite special edition change, I guess it depends on which special edition you're talking about, 1997, 2004, or 2011. Of all of those, it's 2011. It's the fact that they were like, R2-D2 needs fucking rocks in front of him that aren't there when you change camera angles from his point of view. What? Or the reverse TARDIS effect that they did for Jabba's palace, where the doors are now bigger on the outside than they are on the inside, which makes no logical sense. Not just no logical sense in terms of consistency. Yeah, it would help if I was playing. But no logical sense in the framework that is. It's like there's a difference. I guess there's two arguments you can make about making logical sense. There's the, well, does it make logical sense even though it sucks, like Greedo shooting first? Or does it make logical sense to have made the change in the first place? Greedo shooting first, I don't like, but at least Lucas has tried to give a logical reason for why he made the change. I would love to hear Lucas try to give a logical reason why we needed rocks in front of R2-D2 that disappear from the opposite direction, or why the gate to Jabba's palace needed to be bigger. It's those type of changes that seem nonsensical and seem contradictory to, you know, the universe, logic, the laws of physics that really piss me off. I'm okay with him doing other changes because it's his vision, and yeah, sure. But there's a difference between him saying, well, this was always my vision, and making a substantial change, like adding the scene with Jabba back into it, versus this was always my vision, hey, let's add rocks in front of R2. Yes, I'm sure that was always your vision, George. I mean, opening up Cloud City, maybe that was always in his vision and he couldn't do it because of the constraints of the technology of the time. Or showing the Wampa. But I refuse to believe it was always within his vision to make Jabba's palace's door bigger. Or was always within his vision to put rocks in front of R2. And to his credit, he's never said that was always in his vision. It's just his vision now. Perhaps he needs glasses like I do. Whee! Oh, shit! Oh, shit, Nuggets! Shit, Nuggets! Die, Luke! Die, Luke! I will kill you with my overhyped existence! Did I say that? That's what she is. Somebody asked earlier what I thought about Captain Phasma. Captain Phasma is to this film, to an extent, what Boba Fett was to the original trilogy, and to an extent, what Darth Maul was to the prequels. Extremely overhyped, cool-looking, and they're seemingly predominantly, well, to some extent for the wow factor. Wow, it's a stormtrooper in silver armor or chrome armor who's a woman. Wow, look at this bounty hunter with his awesome armor that we know nothing about, but we're gonna, you know, hype up enough that people want to buy the figure, or do the special thing for the mail-away figure. And then, oh, look at this awesome guy. Look, he's got 2 lightsabers and he's acrobatic. Oh, wait, he's dead. It really took the Clone Wars to make Maul an interesting character to me. It took the Legends continuity to make Boba Fett an interesting character to me. Phasma needs something to now make her an interesting character. She gets a little bit in Finn's story in Before the Awakening, but not much. There needs to be more with Phasma to make her interesting. And I actually expected her to take her helmet off at some point, but she didn't. That would have been interesting as well. So you felt a tickle in the back of my throat and didn't want to cough at you guys. Let's see. Ben asks, how are the new OT novelizations? Yeah, gamer. Was he just trying to piss people off? Was he just exerting control just for the hell of it? The world may never know, as the old Tootsie Roll Pop commercials used to say. But Ben asks about how are the new OT novelizations. He's referring to The Princess, the Scoundrel, and the Farm Boy. He's referring to So You Want to Be a Jedi and Beware the Power of the Dark Side. They are all extremely different approaches, I'll put it that way. The Princess, the Scoundrel, and the Farm Boy does this thing where basically it tells A New Hope from 3 different perspectives. Still third person, none of it's first person. But from the perspective of the experiences of Leia first, and then it switches to Han, then it switches to Luke. So it's a little bit odd in that you don't get any of Luke's experiences for the first third or second third of the film. They have to be done by narration later. I think it works well enough. It does have a minimal Stover effect in that it gives us a few scenes that we didn't get before. Like, for instance, If you've ever wondered, did Leia ever try to escape when she was first captured? Yes, she does, and we see how that is foiled by Vader. We get a scene answering the question of, well, wait a second, even though, you know, Biggs is saying that Luke is a great pilot, why is it that Luke is allowed to be part of Red Squadron without any actual showing his prowess to the rebels? He's just becomes a pilot because he shows up and is said to be one or claims to be one. There is actually a sequence in that book in which Wedge takes him through a simulator where he does amazingly in terms of piloting, which is what helps cement his place as Red 5. So that one's all right. Adds a little bit to your experience, but it's nothing special, nothing amazing. So You Want to Be a Jedi is Empire Strikes Back on crack, more or less. It's told from the present, our present day, looking back as if the events of a galaxy far, far away really happened. And it's basically giving the story of Luke as if you, the reader, are Luke in this retelling. And it's trying to show you Jedi skills and Jedi ways of thinking, to the point where it even has little interludes that are basically things you can do in real life as the reader to practice focusing, to practice meditating, to practice stilling your mind and things like that you really could do even without Jedi powers, just like meditative techniques. But it strays a lot from the film in that it omits certain things. It adds weird things like this weird fable that Yoda tells to Luke. It butchers certain scenes like the I just as soon kiss a Wookiee scene. I've described it as, and this may only make sense to Doctor Who fans, what if the current Doctor Who, given his way of speaking, right, his mannerisms, what if the current Doctor Who, because the mannerisms are like that for the speaker, or the narrator in this version of the film, what if the current Doctor Who had seen The Empire Strikes Back many years ago, and is now trying to go from memory and retell the story of The Empire Strikes Back. However, he knows that the person he's telling the story to has never seen it, so who gives a crap if he screws up a bunch of stuff? They're still going to be entertained even if he's not telling an accurate version of the story. That's So You Want to Be a Jedi. So it's not going to be for everyone. It's an interesting, weird take on it, but it's only really good for those wanting an interesting, weird take. If you're looking for something that is film accurate, look elsewhere. The other one, Beware the Power of the Dark Side, doesn't initially feel as though... somebody asked a question, Axel, about the new OT novelizations. Beware the Power of the Dark Side looks on its face to be a much more straightforward adaptation of Return of the Jedi, and to a degree it is. It's written in third-person unlimited, which is a little bit odd, meaning that the narrator knows more than the characters he's focusing on at any given time. It does move Vader's entrance on the Death Star to a little bit later in the story, until after everything's happening on Tatooine. But it's interesting, and it adds little tidbits here and there. Not a lot of new scenes, barring why Mon Mothma is not present for the Battle of Endor, why she leaves. She's on the one ship that goes a different direction to keep her safe. But it also... it gives us little tidbits like how Jabba wasn't actually going to pay Leia/Bush the money that he agreed to after the whole thermal detonator thing. Instead, he was just going to find a way for her to die slowly and painfully. And a little bit on the background of Moff Jerjerrod, who commands the Death Star. I found that one a worthwhile read, but I didn't get a ton out of it. It's just kind of... so that one and the first one, might as well give it a try, but don't expect a lot out of it. But, man, you start talking about So You Want to Be a Jedi, and that one is just... someone is smoking a lot of something hallucinogenic before writing that story. Which I guess was the thing, because this is a guy known for writing fairy tales and fables and things like that. Haven't gotten into the new... gamers asking. Haven't gotten into the new... EU, the new story group canon is what I call it. Disney canon, some people call it canon, basically. What would I suggest is a good start? And we'll have to wrap up here within about the next 10 minutes. Good start would be... depends on what you really want to look at. There's not a lot to it so far. It depends on the style of what you want to read. If you want to just get into something that is adding post-Return of the Jedi... actually, no, I take it back. I'll get... Lost Stars. Lost Stars. It doesn't matter what era. Lost Stars is where you should start, because it's the best that they've got to offer as far as the novels go. Comic-wise, I would highly suggest Darth Vader, because it's a story focusing on Vader, but his supporting cast is excellent. Dr. Aphra is like a female space Indiana Jones who's half nuts and kind of weird. And then she's got 2 incredibly homicidal droids with her. Outwardly homicidal, unlike Chopper in Rebels, who seems to just be homicidal. These are outwardly homicidal droids designed to be homicidal droids. So, yeah, I find that... I'm not paying any attention to this. Those are probably your 2 best starts. Otherwise, start with the first arc of Star Wars, the comic, and the first arc of Darth Vader, because they do interweave a little bit. But aside from Lost Stars and Dark Disciple, there haven't really been a lot of home runs as far as the novels go. They're good, mostly, with the exception of Aftermath. But we're not talking things that are absolutely essential. If you're going to go for younger reader books and you're looking for something that has a more direct impact on the films, I would start with Moving Target. Moving Target is basically what happens from when the Rebels learn of the existence of the second Death Star all the way up to the setting up for the Battle of Endor with the fleet massing at Sullust, and how it happens canonically now. So that's a pretty good one to check out. Whoa! What's a novel with Quinlan Vos? That's Dark Disciple. But bear in mind, this is Quinlan Vos in his Clone Wars incarnation, slightly made darker to fit his non-Clone Wars incarnation. But this is not Quinlan Vos as we knew him in the Legends continuity. This is still Clone Wars Vos, Beach Bum Vos to some degree. But he gets a lot more depth compared to what he was in Clone Wars. And it is a fantastic end to the arc of Asajj Ventress. If you watch the Clone Wars and you followed Asajj Ventress's arc, and this will be our last match, by the way. You followed Asajj Ventress's arc throughout the Clone Wars as she went from being, Dooku's supposed apprentice to eventually being a castaway, setting up things with Asajj, eventually becoming the Night Sister, becoming the bounty hunter, and just sort of trying to redefine herself. It is a fantastic end to that, and it's the first Star Wars book in a long time that brought me close to tears. And then Lost Stars did the same thing near the end of that book. So Lost Stars and Dark Disciple are big. Yes, I recommend. Let's go with an Honor Guard this time. Alright, so we're getting down to the last match here. If we got any one last question or one last topic to throw in here. Though I think there's probably a tiny bit of lag between me and you guys, so hopefully there'll be one that'll pop up sometime prior to when I wrap up. My thought is to wrap up this, whatchamacallit, this round, this match, and just do a quick check of where things stand for me here. I hear pew 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 pew. There he is.
We got the last
Die! Oh! And then I did. All the villains were... okay, it was an orbital strike. I was like, how the hell did I die if it's actually over? Like, what the hell? Yeah, Ventress, I actually kind of like Ventress's arc more in Clone Wars than I liked in Legends. A lot of the Clone Wars era, I initially preferred the Legends continuity, but I really like the Ahsoka character now. I hated her the first, 2 to 3 seasons. Now, I feel like we're invested... What the hell? I feel like we're invested in Ahsoka, and I like Rex and the new characters that they introduced in it. So I'm actually okay with the idea that, one or the other could be true. Of course, in canon, the cartoon series is the only existing version of the Clone Wars, whereas in Legends continuity, it's actually both that somehow are supposed to fit together, but they never have told us how. They're all just different... Was it Chris Sarassi said? They're all just mirrors into the continuity, and some mirrors are clearer than others. Whatever. But yes, I very much like the way that things played out there for the Ventress character. Boom! It was 4-0, and now it's 2-4. How do you like them apples? Wow, and I'm second place on my team, and I'm barely paying attention, which goes to show how bad my team might actually be. Alrighty then. So, for those who are looking for more information about The Force Awakens, since that is sort of the theme here, and I don't have any new questions yet, let me say that the visual dictionary, I would argue, is an... Oh, shit, I'm Han, not Luke. No wonder I can't jump over there and do my little spinny lightsaber thing. He doesn't have a lightsaber, he's effing Han Solo. But he's not effing Han Solo, that was Leia's job, and that's where Kylo came from. And for those who are bitching, spoiler warning at the bottom, spoiler in the name of the file as the stream is going, in the title of it, so this is a Force Awakens spoilerific stream this time. So don't gripe. Nobody is yet, I'm just saying. Wow, yeah, okay, so my train of thought just went woo-woo and left. And there's the end of the match, 5-2. I would definitely recommend the visual dictionary. I think it is a must-read. I think it'll enhance your enjoyment of the film. From the standpoint of the novelization, minor Stover effect. I don't think it's something where you're really going to get a whole lot out of it, but it's worth a read. Before the Awakening, I would definitely recommend, not so much for the Rey story, but for the Finn and the Poe stories that are in it. Those are actually pretty good. Incredible Cross Sections is cool to look at. Doesn't really add much to the experience of seeing the film. So, you know, it just kind of depends on what exactly it is that you are looking for with your additional stuff. Do I think The Force Awakens is just a repeat of episodes 4 through 6, or 4 in particular? I addressed that actually earlier in the feed. Again, remember that Star Wars, Gary, is written as music, refrains, choruses, verses. If this were any other series, I would decry it as too much of a ripoff of A New Hope, just like in a lot of ways Return of the Jedi was. Whereas I would argue in this case it is just that same musical theme. It's similar things happening again with different context and different characters to give us a different version, say a different verse of the same song, so to speak. Or the different recurrence of a melody within instrumental music. And Liam, yes, I am Nathan P. Butler of Star Wars Beyond the Films, the Star Wars Timeline Gold, Star Wars Reports Rebels Roundtable, and all this other stuff. That is me. Glad you dig the Star Wars Timeline Gold. Folks, that's at starwarsfanworks.com/timeline. It's a comprehensive chronology of the Star Wars universe. It is the most extensive, most comprehensive Star Wars chronology available anywhere, including within Lucasfilm, really, because the Holocron is a database, not a chronology document. But it's basically, there's a Legends Volume 1 that's almost 1,000 pages or something. I mean, the whole thing's about 3,000 pages almost. But there's a Legends Volume 1 that gives you all the stories in the Legends continuity up to A New Hope. There's Volume 2, takes you from A New Hope through the end of the Legends continuity. There's a separate document called the Clone Wars Supplement that pulls out the Clone Wars and gives you the Clone Wars cartoon version of it in Legends and the Clone Wars pre-cartoon version in Legends, essentially, because there's no way to really fit those two together yet, so it's kind of pulled out and given those two different approaches there. There is an appendices document with all kinds of stuff, like a release timeline, a timeline of Star Wars releases in order, and all that kind of stuff. But then, probably most importantly for those who are reading stuff now, there is the new Story Group Canon document, which is a comprehensive timeline of Story Group Canon as of when it was released. I released it back on October 17th, because that was its 18th anniversary and my 36th birthday, the moment when I had been doing it for literally half of my life. But I plan a new release sometime, hopefully summer, because there's a lot of stuff to now add thanks to The Force Awakens and some of these new publications. The trick is just getting the time to actually go through it. Fantasy Flight Games is kicking my ass now with 4 different source books they released in the span of a week that I now have to go through to pull information from and whatnot. But thank you. I really appreciate you taking the time to check it out. And yes, Doctor Who level pack. I probably will do more LEGO Dimensions at some point. I've actually got stuff for LEGO Dimensions I haven't even built yet because they're sitting in the bag, so I haven't even played much more of the game here. I also do intend to eventually go through a bunch of stuff with Disney Infinity on here. I finished the Twilight of the Republic storyline on it, and leveled up Ahsoka all the way, but I haven't done really much more with that game, so I probably ought to, and when I do, I probably ought to stream it. Although it kind of sucks. They put the little label that says Disney Infinity up in the corner over the top of the character and some of the information you'd kind of need to see to fully understand the game. Quick look here. I'm just doing a quick check. Oh, it's only 50 kills is my other one. That's an easy one. Get 15 kills with an ATSD is kind of a pain in the ass. Just curious what my diorama looks like at this point and what I need to be focusing on if I'm going to knock out any diorama stuff. Hello, Phelan. We're just actually wrapping up at this point. We're coming very, very close to wrapping up. Just doing a quick check here. If you missed the full stream, of course, it's youtube.com/user/chrono radio. If you want to, it's CHRONO, like chrono, like chronology, radio, RADIO, all ran together. Okay, so I do have the ad now. You can go through and go back and look at this feed from earlier, and you get all kinds of thoughts about The Force Awakens and questions from the chat and whatnot, trying to get those thoughts out there prior to getting them out with Star Wars Beyond the Films or the Star Wars Reports Rebels Roundtable, both at StarWarsReport.com. And yeah, I went with the character that has the scruff, but didn't go for a character that has hair. Initially because I was going to have a character with hair for the Empire, a bald character for the Rebels, but I found I still get so confused trying to tell which side I'm on if I'm not paying attention, especially when I'm doing a stream, that I just said screw it and left the helmet on for the Imperial character. So now I'm just fighting my way to eventually get to the, whatchamacallit, or Faye, sorry, to eventually get to the point where I am able to unlock some of the aliens and whatnot. I will say, and this is sort of a last thought to leave you with here, I'm sitting on 38,000 credits now, and I'm sitting at level 28. I was significantly below that, probably only around about 10,000 or less credits, and at about level 19 about a week ago. They did that special double credits, double points, double XP, whatever you want to call it, weekend recently, that really made it feel like progression was at the pace that it should be. For a game like this that doesn't have a story, a game that is essentially lather, rinse, repeat, play these multiplayer matches over and over and over again and grind the shit out of it, to me, the progression that we got during the XP weekend, that's what it should be. Progression right now in terms of XP, in terms of credits, is about half the pace that I would expect it to be in this type of game. I would hope that that means that either at some point they'll see that and they'll do an update that allows more XP for what you're doing, or they simply do more of those, whatchamacallits, more of those double XP, double points type weekends. It absolutely felt better and more fun playing the game when I really felt like I was making true progress over the weekend. I even got to a point where I got out my PlayStation Vita and did remote play on. I didn't play a lot because my wife's off that weekend, so we were doing a lot of stuff together. But even when we were doing things like watching She Loves Hemlock Grove, and we were watching the rest of Hemlock Grove on Netflix, I could bust out we're doing that on a different system. I could bust out my Vita, use remote play, and play some Battlefront, and even if I sucked because the controls aren't as good on the Vita, I'm still able to nail XP and still jump up from 19 to 28 within the span of playing what basically would have been a hardcore gamer playing for maybe part of a day. That is something they really need to do sometime in the near future. Give us more of that. As for Luke in The Force Awakens, as people mentioned, yes, I found it funny that as much as they promoted Mark Hamill's back and he's got a beard, well, yeah, but he's only in it for one shot basically at the end and reaching up to touch R2, which, by the way, has rain coming down, which is why I think that's a flashback, and so is the Knights of Ren being there. I think that somehow Rey in that shot is a surrogate for Luke or something whenever she's sort of taken aback when she is confronted by the Knights of Ren. That may be something we're seeing for the future, but I'm thinking it's probably a flashback. Let's see. Trying to answer the questions very quickly. When do I stream? Whenever I'm able, basically. For what it's worth, I do it when my wife is at work, not while she is here. And her work schedule tends to be 11 Eastern, give or take, until about 7:30 to 8 Eastern on a day that's not like today where she works the morning shift. So usually if I'm streaming, it's probably going to be sometime usually in the afternoon, or it'll be really early morning because I'll need to do that to be able to get some of my friends who are playing in the Pacific time zone to be able to get on before they go to work for that day. So it just kind of depends. Any crying? No crying for The Force Awakens, although I found that on my second... Whoops, dropped my controller here. On my second viewing, I had more of an emotional welling up than I did on my first, especially at that particular moment with Kylo and Han confronting on the catwalk and all. I really sort of felt... I'll be honest, I felt more for Kylo probably at that moment, at least until he actually turns into a dick. Let's see, do I make videos or do I work or both. Liam, yeah, when you get on, send me a friend request. Let me know who you are when you send the request to add you on here. It may be at some point being able to do it on the stream or just playing in general, because I don't stream every time I play. It just depends on how long I'm going to be on, because I have to kind of set things up with the chair and the camera and the headset and moving my modem and whatnot. Yes, I'd let me know sometimes. Let's see. Do I stream workable? I work. I am a teacher by trade. I am a high school, well, initially was a high school teacher. I'm now a high school and middle school teacher, but I'm fortunate in that I am the first full-time teacher for social studies for what's called Fulton Virtual School. It is an online school or an online platform that we use within Fulton County, Georgia, around the Atlanta area, to give students more options in how they take classes. So while I do often visit schools to check in on the students periodically or go in there and help them get adjusted to getting used to the platform and everything, and I do have meetings and stuff like that to go to, most of the work that I do for my main position within the county, the Fulton Virtual thing, is from home. So I'm fortunate in that as long as, for instance, during the school year, I could stream as long as I've got my iPad up with my classroom pulled up, or the MacBook or something that the school has provided pulled up, so that, you know, if a student needs a retake or has something I need to do for them, I can do it right then. Technically, we're supposed to respond to anything that a student submits, or emails or anything like that, or voicemails, within 3 hours. I think 3 hours is way too long, but that does give me a little bit of leeway. But I do tend to focus on getting a chance to live stream when I can. I do the videos, of course, for the YouTube channel from the Star Wars Home Video Library and such, with my giant home video collection. I do the podcasting, I do the timeline. Those are all just things that I do for fun, kind of on the side as a hobby to kill time. I tend to not like to sit on my butt very much. I like to be doing something, even if it's sitting on my butt working on something to do something. I like that creative process, and it has opened up the door to more professional things. Like I just recently had an essay published in a long time ago exploring the Star Wars Cinematic Universe, which is an essay collection. I've got essays coming up in the next 2 volumes of that, the one on the comics and the one which will be about the Marvel comics up through Empire. And then I've got one in actually I write the afterword in the 3rd one, which is the afterword opposite a forward by Timothy Zahn, which is kind of cool. And it's what's kind of opened the door to writing things like my sci-fi time travel telepath novel, Greater Good, and that sort of things. But my primary thing is teaching. It just so happens that now I have a lot more time to be a little more flexible, because it's an online teaching position that I can do from virtually. Virtually. Didn't mean that as a pun. From virtually anywhere. Whew. Okay, so that said, and awesome, I am so glad, Ben, that you get a chance to buy a Betamax player. I want to get a Betamax player, a CED player, and a Laserdisc player sometime in the near future, because I don't have any of them, and I want to get them and do some. I'm hoping that the same thing I can use to digitize VHS, I can digitize things from those sources too. I just have to take the time to find a player. I'm sure I can find players easily on eBay and whatnot. I just haven't, taking the time to do so. The money and such hasn't been there. What kind of history do I teach? Asked Lego Fan. I teach, actually right now I teach, because I'm the only full-time social studies teacher for Fulton Virtual, I teach 6th grade through 12th. So I teach 6th grade world studies and 7th grade world studies, which together is like global studies. I teach Georgia studies, which is a Georgia-only class, obviously, for 8th grade. I teach government, world history, U.S. history, and economics, which are the required courses for high school. I also teach AP Human Geography and AP World History. But all of that is online using a platform called Edgenuity, where a lot of the material and the content is there, and we act kind of as facilitators and whatnot for that. All right, so I'm going to have to head. It is 12:15. It is 2:15 Eastern. The wife is off. She's probably just wrapping up things there and getting ready to head back here, so it's time for me to start thinking about what we're going to have for lunch. I will do more streaming in the near future, but it will probably not be, I'm looking at the calendar here, probably not until the 30th or later, just so you know, because, of course, today is Christmas Eve, tomorrow is Christmas Day. My wife has taken personal time off to be able to be off all around Christmas, so it'll probably be the 30th or later when I hop back on. Hopefully I'll be able to get somebody with me like Michael or Mark, depending on their time. Yeah, I appreciate you guys coming on. Feel free to keep commenting. You can comment in the regular comments underneath the video once it is processed, and then I'll be able to answer those as they pop up for me on the notifications over in the corner. I have not seen any other Battlefront live streams. I just haven't really taken the time to look at them. So Venos, I have not seen at this point. But thank you all for watching. I'm going to hop out of here. You can find me, of course, you can find me on Facebook. Find me on Twitter at SWFanWorks or at SW Beyond Films. That's me and Marks. Or at Rebels Round for Rebels Roundtable if you're talking Rebels. On Facebook, Star Wars Beyond the Films, the Star Wars Timeline Gold. Do searches for those. You will find them. Thank you all. Happy holidays. Thank you, Gamer. Happy holidays to all of you. Merry Christmas tomorrow for those of you who celebrate. And hopefully I will see you before then. But if I don't, Happy New Year. And we'll be back on the stream sometime in the near future with more of Battlefront and hopefully some Disney and such. Until then, enjoy multiple screenings of The Force Awakens. I know I probably still will be.